Good morning, everybody. So today with David, we'll give a demo of API governance at scale with Axway Amplify. So David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, well, thanks ever so much, Eric. Yeah, my name's David. I work with Axway in the UK team. I'm straight out of Apidays London and into Apidays Paris, which of course is a much superior event with more people and cooler tech. But yeah, I'm Apidays experienced and very much looking forward to supporting Eric, telling you how you can get from Eric's earlier pitching to the actual delivery of that in your workplace with Axway technology.
Thank you. And myself, Eric Horesnyi. I'm a SVP of API platform at Axway. And so I am looking forward to supporting you all in your effort to build platforms. So for those who missed the previous talk, was referring to a model that can be used by anybody working in APIs as part of an API team to actually govern APIs towards success, starting with questioning or clarifying what are your values, defining your mission, clarifying and designing your vision with a visual way of doing it. Then finally building a business plan, and we'll get back to that aspect. Creating APIs as a product based on best practices, and then driving adoption within of your APIs so that you actually reach success. So in terms of the value drivers for APIs, there are three reasons why you would want to adopt and push APIs within an organization. The first one is to drive revenue via adoption of your services. The second one is to drive efficiency by saving costs. And the third one is on resilience and actually mitigating risk that your organization may face. So here, what we're going to do is to look at this model in more details. So we can look into the value that you can get from consumption, value from efficiency, and from resilience. And for example, in terms of direct clients, you can actually help your company acquire clients more quickly. We had examples of a customer that could quadruple the number of clients he could acquire thanks to his API program. And that's value that should be recognized by your company as part of your API program budget. Same with your partners. Think about how much partners you can acquire if you've automated all the onboarding with your partners, how fast it's going to be thanks to APIs, and how much more revenue you're going to be able to generate thanks to the adoption of APIs. Drivers are marketplace also. For example, if you distribute APIs from third parties, or if your APIs are being distributed by third parties, you're going to be successful. Other value drivers are in the cost category. So APIs, as we know, help cut costs, and they also increase employee productivity by providing superior journey to employees for them to integrate or to actually interface with their employees. APIs can, with self-service, can automate the generation of revenue and bring then efficiency. And then on resiliency, if you think about APIs to comply with PSD2 in banking, for example, this is where you can help your company stay in business. If you are in telecommunications, it can be TM Forum. If you're in healthcare, it can be HR7. If you were in pretty much all the sectors, it can be PCI DSS. There are lots of PCI DSS for e-invoicing. There are lots of reasons why your company may stay in business by adopting APIs, and this value needs to be recognized as part of what you do on a daily basis. So here today with David, what we'll illustrate are actually four cases. The first one is the case of client acquisition or client retention with faster time to market new features. The second one is the identification of redundant APIs that allows you to cut redundancies in your cost base. The third one is going to be about building new services without having to build one-to-one integrations, which brings a lot of efficiency. And the fourth one will be about building security by being able to discover APIs. Now I hand over to David. You're going to cover the agenda.
Thank you ever so much for that great introduction, Eric. So absolutely. So we've heard about how your organization, all the challenges within your organization, how we're going to address them. So what I'd like to do now is tie that back to some real world examples of how we can achieve all those amazing things that Eric has talked about, and how we take them from the theory into actual execution, and how we do that at Axway in particular. So initially we're going to show you a few demos. We're going to jump back and forward from this demo agenda slide each time. So the idea is that on the bottom, you'll see the Axway API ecosystem. That's a little talk I'm going to give initially to set the scene about the Axway product set and how it addresses all these challenges. And at the top, with the arrow pointing, you can see on the top line, you're going to see Eric's concept. So what we're going to do is do a direct mapping with a series of demos, one-to-one mapping between the concepts in your organization and your challenges within your business that Eric's been addressing. And then on the bottom line is how we actually do it at Axway. And then we're going to back those up with some live demos. So yeah, if you could kindly move on there. And we're going to do each of these one by one. So yeah, we'll start with how we address the platform economy challenge with our Axway API ecosystem, which is a little talk I'm going to show you rather than a demo. Then we've got how we address the time to market challenge with our unified catalog, which again is a very visual demo, which we can show you. Then cutting redundancies, that will show you our multi-gateway approach. And this is a really critical piece where we actually show all the different parts of different API vendors in different organizations, in different clouds, and how we can actually bring all that together and start to observe that there might be duplicates of APIs. One team might have done something building one API, another team may have built something similar, completely in isolation. So that those redundancies can be picked up on. First of all, you'll discover those redundancies, then we'll show you how to actually fix those redundancies. So huge efficiencies can be unlocked at the multi-gateway approach. Next one, yeah, thank you. Then in terms of security, always a challenge with API. Do you have a uniform security model across your entire business for API? Pretty much nobody does. So we'll show you how that can be addressed all from a common single pane of glass front end. And we're actually going to show you how two different API management platforms, one from Azure and one from Axway, completely separate vendors, can then actually have unified security placed at the front and a subscription model that is seamless for the end user, and up to the point where that API consumer doesn't even need to know where those APIs come from. They don't need to care if it's an Azure platform or if it's an Axway platform or an AWS or any other API management system. So that's going to be the exciting bit near the end. And then finally, we're going to show how you've now got this incredible API ecosystem, but what if you're not sophisticated and advanced? What if you kind of don't have that many APIs and you actually want to start building APIs, but you don't really know how? API Builder is something which we're going to show you right at the end as for those less API advanced organizations, and you might have a legacy database that you want to enable and make an API out of it, what we call a CRUD API, create, retrieve, update, and delete. And we'll show you how that can be done in quite simply a one-click operation. So you can start out with no APIs at all in your business, an Oracle or a MySQL database with some cool information on there. You can't get at it. You can't access it in the API economy. We're going to show you how. So thanks ever so much, Eric. So what I'll do then is start off with the API ecosystem. And the concept of the API ecosystem within Axway is that we're a vendor that has a very wide range of API products, which all fit together to address your every need. So we find that a lot of our customers have got various different technologies for API. Again, I mentioned the Azure platform, the Azure API Manager, some perhaps also the Amazon AWS API Gateway, and also many other independent software vendors, WSO2 Kong, all the guys that are at this show. So you may have already a picture that is built up of one or more of those vendors. But the Axway approach is slightly different in that we sit above all those other vendors and unite them in what we call a single pane of glass view. And to do that, we have, and this is the first of the building blocks of the API ecosystem, the widest and most diverse API tool set. So what that means is that when you subscribe to Axway, you get an API management system, fully featured, very feature rich, very mature. You also get what we call Amplify, which is the high-level control plane for observability and discoverability across all of your API managers. They have the Axway one plus any others you have. They could be in a different cloud, they could be on-prem, they could be in different countries, different geographical regions. So in addition to that, we also have the ability to build APIs from scratch in a low-code / no-code environment with, as I mentioned on the previous slide, API Builder. So what I mean by the widest and most diverse API toolset is when you subscribe to Axway, you get everything. You get absolutely everything you need to either transform your existing API organization, make it coherent, and make it as powerful as it can be. Or even if you start from zero and you're just setting out in APIs, we have all the tools you need to build from scratch. So that's the purpose of the widest and most diverse API toolset. We're not just an API management vendor, we are a high-level API ecosystem vendor over the top. So that's what the blue box means. In terms of the dark grey box, vendor consolidation, this is a key piece. We have a high-level control plane that sits above all those other API management vendors and rationalizes all those resources available on each of them into one nice, clean, unified catalog, which you're about to see. So that's the key piece. We're not asking you to rip and replace any of your investments with other API management vendors. What we're doing is offering to unlock the potential of those for you. So it's not a rip and replace pitch. This is an augmentation strategy with Axway. And so when you subscribe to us, then we actually leverage and enhance your experience with your existing assets. API transformation. This is important because, as Eric has mentioned, everyone has a journey that they're on and wants to where they need to get to with the API economy. And running your API business as a lean startup essentially means that you're going to have to get to a position where your business is truly API enabled. And even teams that traditionally don't necessarily know how to produce new APIs, API Builder is a good example of how even very low tech capable teams in terms of API can actually start building APIs and offering them to the rest of the business. So it's about bringing everybody on that journey within your organization, even perhaps the people that didn't think they would be API users and API creators. They can be, and that's the exciting part of the API transformation piece, is that with low code, no code tools, anybody can start building compelling APIs. It doesn't have to be a specialist niche thing anymore. In terms of the sort of cream colored box, that pillar is exceptional deployment flexibility. Essentially means that we don't tie you down to an environment. We're cloud agnostic and we're platform agnostic. So you could say, well, we like to deploy our API management in Kubernetes on-prem or in OpenShift, or maybe in AWS in the cloud, or all of the above, or and we can support you. So we're not tied or tethered to any specific deployment architecture at all, or any specific cloud. We're entirely neutral. And finally, the red box at the bottom, that is important, and this is more of a sales consumption issue than it is a technical issue. But the token-based subscription model that comes with the Axway Amplify ecosystem is structured as such that you can consume everything. So all of these cool things you're about to see today, you don't have to buy them separately. The ecosystem approach is tied into the subscription-based licensing approach. So yeah, once you subscribe to Axway, all of these cool features are lit up and you can use them and consume them as you need based on a number of tokens per month. So yeah, that's the vision. So let's move on to the first piece of the demos. So if I could take the screen sharing from you, Eric, and the first one.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So what we'll do is start off, if we could just go back to the first of those pillars. Here we go. So can you see my screen now? Can you see that, Eric? Is that now?
Let me check. It could be yours. Yeah, it's yours.
Ah, great. Yeah, because we both got the same screen. Cool. So first of all, we talked about Eric's concept of the platform economy and the API ecosystem. Now we're going to talk about the unified catalog and our example of how we can address time to market. So unified catalog, what is it? We've been talking about it all morning. So let's show you. So the unified catalog is essentially the best way of describing it. If I can find the right, here we go. So the best way of describing unified catalog is, and once I show it on the screen, you'll notice that it kind of looks like a developer portal. And that essentially is the experience that we're providing here. So you can see all these API assets, which you then got features for those assets, such as you can drill down and have a closer look at them. So we can click on this and have a look at this particular API. We can observe the documentation. We can see what API methods are available and how we might use that in our code, in our application. And finally, the ability to subscribe, and we could subscribe to that asset. There's also an administrator level view on the right of how many people are viewing this particular API. So from an administrator perspective, already you're starting to get some business intelligence. Oh, look, quite a lot of people are looking at this API. There's some serious interest here. And yeah, so essentially this is a developer portal experience, but it has one key difference in that you have got this here is an administrator view. And if I compare with, on the left, you'll see this is actually an API consumer view. So there's much less APIs available on the left for our API consumer. And on the right, then there's a huge amount of APIs, pretty much the whole thing, because the person on the right is an administrator. And you also notice that on the right, the administrator gets these statistics so that the business intelligence and the observability is there. Whereas on the left, the API consumer doesn't need to worry about those statistics. They're just thinking, okay, can I use these APIs to code against? So it's a very different experience right out of the box with Unified Catalog. But think of it as a developer portal that encompasses all of your assets across the entire business. So the APIs you're seeing in here aren't just from Axway API managers. They're actually, and if we drill into some of these a bit further, you can see this one here, this cheese API here, make it a little bigger. That is actually coming from the Axway API gateway. So this one is coming from Axway API manager. Typically in a real world scenario, you wouldn't have these bits in brackets. This is just illustrative so that we can show you what's actually different. And then we can see another cheese API, which is coming in from our Azure API gateway. So both these assets have come from different API managers, different API gateways. And it may well be the case, and in a lot of the businesses we work with, we find that the people who look after the Azure API gateway, let's say they've done some deployments in Azure, they've put some applications in the cloud, and they've said, oh, well, that looks good. There's a native API manager inside Azure. We'll use that. That makes sense. Start developing against it, start registering some APIs with it. And then similarly, you've got your Axway gateway, which might be different stakeholders in the business. They might have deployed that on-prem or in their different cloud, and then gone off and developed a cheese API. So very quickly we can see and what Eric has described as redundancy. There's two cheese APIs now. As a user, I don't know which of these to use, and I'm being given the option of both. But if we go back to our actual view on the right there of our administrator, their job ultimately is to say, well, we need to decide which of these two cheese applications we're going to run within the business. We can't have both of them. So what they would typically do is run these two in parallel, and then let the users start using them, subscribing to them. Then the platform Amplify Observer gives you the ability to actually compare, and we're going to do that in a moment, the traffic side by side of these two apps. So in other words, it's really a competition between these two, and then the business will eventually retire the one that is least popular. So we can see that Cheese API and Axway is looking pretty good. Got a series of methods, and similarly, the other Cheese API that's on a different API management platform on Azure. Yeah, again, doesn't seem to have very good documentation. Similar to methods. So yeah, the documentation is slightly different because it's been developed in a different area. So what we can do now is actually subscribe to those APIs in a unified experience. But before we do that, that's going to be another one of the pillars of the demo. So now we've seen the concept of unified catalog and how we can have an administrator view and which gets statistics built in, and then the actual end user view. You can liken that to a developer portal. So that's the unified catalog. And what that means is time to market reductions. You've now got everything in the business that's already been built. Nobody needs to reinvent the wheel. And this application developer can very quickly use whichever is the best of these APIs and get straight into developing maybe more APIs, which will then end up in the catalog. So already you're concentrating the best of the best across the business, and you're now one API business with one API ecosystem. So that's the key message of the unified catalog. And if we go back to our headings, so that's the red pillar here. So that, of course, is only made possible by this blue pillar, multi-gateway. So we're going to have a look at how that is achieved. So multi-gateway is a concept whereby you have any number of API gateways that have APIs on them from any number of vendors, and it could be any vendor, literally any vendor. So let's go to, that's our catalog tab in the administrator view. Let's have a look at our topology tab. Okay, and in there, you'll see a whole bunch of different, in this case, API gateways. So some of them are connected up. It looks like the Azure one is partially connected. The rest of them seem to be fully connected. So Amplify, as the high-level control plane, knows about all these different API gateways from our own product, which is a sister product within Axway, the Axway API gateway, also Kong, Azure, and AWS. So these API gateways are, this one's clearly running in AWS, this one's going to be running in Azure. These API gateways are all in production, and different teams within our business, our organization, are developing against them and putting APIs on them. They're doing them as silos, they're doing them in isolation. So we've now got this list in here. And how does this list actually interact with those actual gateways? So if we have a look at the Axway one, we'll notice that each of these environments, as we call them, have two ways of interacting with those API gateways. They have the discovery agent and the traceability agent. And the important thing about those two agents is the discovery agent does two things. It looks, it basically scans those platforms and discovers what API resources are on them. And it also enables the subscription flow. So if you decide you want to, for instance, subscribe to this cat API down here, then the discovery agent will actually handle that subscription for you. So any complexity, because of course the Azure subscription process for an API is going to be very different to the Axway process, is also going to be very different to the AWS process, because each of these subscription processes for these different API managers is bespoke and proprietary. There's no industry standard for subscribing. So all that complexity is hidden away by the discovery agent. So it just shows you the APIs on that, as you can see down the bottom. Here's the APIs we've discovered on that platform, and we'll let you subscribe to them using the standard way of subscribing in Amplify, which is A, centralized, and B, you have full control over. And there's one other agent that each of these integrations runs with, and that is called the traceability agent. And again, very much like discovery, it does what it says on the tin. Traceability is, it collects the logs, the actual data plane traffic logs from that particular API gateway, so that all of the logs together for each of the different API gateways will end up in this thing on the left, which is the API observer. So the traceability agent will collect logs from all those different API gateways and combine them and merge them. So you've got one single place for observing data traffic or data plane traffic from each of those integrations. Now that becomes incredibly powerful because it means you can then, in the API observer, which we'll come to in a second, we can then actually see, objectively compare. So if we said, well, how well is the Cheese API on Azure performing compared to the Cheese API on the Axway gateway? We know that how much traffic has one got versus the other. And could we, for instance, evaluate them side by side? Which one performs the best? Which one's the fastest to respond? Which has the lowest latency? Which one has the most traffic? And which one has the most use? Which one has the most subscribers? So all those business level decisions come from this traceability agent. So it's not really, we're not collecting the logs from those platforms for debugging purposes, for kind of operational reasons. This is a high level business reasons, so that we can actually get actionable intelligence from that. So each of our environments, it'll be the same for this AWS one, for example, are all built the same way. They have the discovery agent discovering what APIs are available. In this case, there's a couple of APIs on that platform. And the traceability agent, which is scanning the logs, and any data plane traffic events will be dropped into the API observer. So the API observer, you can see here some API traffic. This is coming in from an Axway gateway, but it could equally be any of the other gateways that we've seen in place. And that's where you start to get the ability to compare side by side. So if we were, for instance, to select in the last, let's say last week, and see the traffic, we've got quite a bit of traffic from the Axway gateway, and I think we should probably, let's check all environments. There we go. So what we'll have here is the ability to actually compare two different gateways together. So if we go to API usage, okay, so here we're looking at all APIs across all environments and all runtime. So this is the traffic in the entire platform across the last week. If we move that to the right and open another new window, compare it to the left, we will then start to see how the multi-gateway approach can actually give us the ability to get real actionable business intelligence. So let's set the time to a week. And on the right, we'll say our Axway environment. And on the left, we'll say, for example, our Azure API gateway environment. So you can see that there's been some traffic there. And here we are, we're comparing two different API gateways within our business, the Axway gateway versus the Azure gateway. We could equally compare APIs. So we could compare the APIs on this particular platform. So we could compare our Cheese API, for example, on Azure with our Cheese API on Axway, and then get some objective comparisons there. So let's see if we can just do that with 1 week granularity. So there's so many APIs in the system that I doubt I'm going to find it very easily, because we've got probably too many set up. So what I'll do is probably leave that one towards the end, where we've got some fresh traffic just within the last hour, because with a week's traffic, we've had so many APIs hitting it. So what I'll do is move on with the demo and then come back to this at the end, and we can just see within the last few minutes, and then we can objectively compare two APIs. But the concept is there, whereby you can compare API management platforms, you can compare individual APIs right down to that level of granularity between those two platforms. So that's the power of the API observer, and that comes from, just to recap, that comes from the traceability agents. So that is the second, in fact, that's the third pillar, and that's the multi-gateway approach. And just to recap then, the multi-gateway is the concept whereby we discover resources on all these different API management platforms, and we collect the data plane logs from all these different platforms, as well as handle the subscription handling for APIs, so that in our unified catalog, and just to recap with that, we don't need to worry about where these APIs come from. We just consume them. We subscribe on them, and we can consume them and utilize them. And then our, if you like, our administrator level user can then go in and actually get actionable intelligence on which APIs work the best, on which platforms, which are the fastest, which have the lowest latencies. So that's the multi-gateway approach. And the multi-gateway underpins the ability to have unified catalog. So unified catalog is the cool piece that the end users and the API consumers see, and that's all they see, and that's all they have to care about. And multi-gateway is how it's achieved under the hood at the admin level. So if you're an administrator, you're going to be really interested in multi-gateway piece, and you're going to be responsible for cutting those redundancies, because you're going to have to retire one of those cheese APIs and deprecate it in favor of the other one at some point. And to get that actionable intelligence, you will need the multi-gateway story. Whereas for your developers who are just looking to use the very latest and best version of the cheese API, they don't care where it came from. They just want the coolest one and the newest one and the best one. They can then address their time to market challenges and proceed much more quickly without reinventing the wheel or building a third version of the cheese API, because previously they didn't know that the first two existed. So that's the compelling value propositions there. And now we're going to come on to the fourth pillar of how we achieve this. Now, security is our problem. How do we address this? We address this with what we call multi-gateway subscription. And that's another key piece which we have in Unified Catalog. So you'll notice we have within Unified Catalog, we also have a subscriptions tab. And you can see there's an old subscription there that's been unsubscribed. So if we do a bit of housekeeping, we can get rid of that. And if we then decide, okay, I'm a developer, I'm looking through all of these apps, and we think, okay, let's try this one. Let's have a go at this Cheese API version 2, see what that's like. So we've looked at the methods, established we'd like to try it. We know that the API is secured. So that security is the key piece. And we now need to get access to some credentials. So if we subscribe to that, and let's subscribe to my Azure subscription cheese, and we'll call that application we're going to develop my Azure cheese app. So now we're going to subscribe to, and that is now on its way. So if we go into our subscriptions tab, we can see that subscribing, and this has been set up. There's a very flexible subscriptions mechanism in Axway Amplify. So you could customize to have different steps. You can have automatic approval, or you can have manual approval, or you can, for instance, flash up a Teams card in an approvers window, and they can then say, yes, I approve of that, that's fine. So it looks like the automated approval seems to have taken place. And if we go back to the catalog, you can see that we're now subscribed. Yep, so we're now subscribed. And if we just refresh have we got our API key? We should get, here we go. So you can see here, we've got a fresh email. And again, this is just one possible integration with Axway Amplify. We've received an email, and in it, we've got a shiny new API key, which we can use. So now we can consume that API, and our credentials and the security credentials has been given to us, as well as telling us how to actually use that in an API key header. So there's the name of the header, and there's the name of the key. So we now have been told how to use this and how to consume our API with our own privately made key. And we've done that through Axway Amplify without any complexity at all. We've just said we'd like to subscribe to it. But of course, we don't know this as a developer, and we don't care as a developer. But behind there's actually an Azure API gateway behind the scenes actually hosting this resource. So Axway has abstracted all that complexity of the subscription process in a back-to-back fashion. So let's open up in one of our other windows. So if we actually look, this is the Microsoft Azure portal, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. And let's just refresh that to make sure it's got the latest information. So we can see this is the administrator view and the of Microsoft Azure on the right. And if we take a zoom into this, maybe make it a bit bigger because it's very tiny text, we'll see in the subscriptions tab, this subscription here, My Azure Cheese App, has been created. The credentials are obfuscated. So this subscription has actually been created by Amplify in terms of completely, if you like, abstracting away all that complexity for subscription. We just handled all that in Axway. So this user is now subscribed to a resource which just so happens to be on a Microsoft Azure gateway, but the user does not know and does not care. And similarly, this other Cheese API resource, it just so happens to live on an Axway API gateway, but again, we can subscribe just the same. So my Axway subscription cheese, okay, cheese one, we'll call that, and application, cheese application. So again, the subscription process is the same. The developer experience is uniform, and the developer doesn't need to be worried at all about where those resources are finally honed. So you can see the power of this system, whereby the API consumers are now completely detached from the API platforms, and they've got a single pane of glass view. And if we go back to our API key, which was given for that Azure app, we can just hit that with some real world traffic just to make sure it works. So here's Postman. And if we go to our Cheese API in Azure and put in our shiny new key, get rid of the old key, and we'll paste in our shiny new one, and hopefully, there we go. So the Cheese API is now working and we're getting cheese resources. Let's try a different cheese. So yeah, instantly we're consuming that API. Actually, not cheese. Let's try cheddar. That's more like it. So yeah, we've basically gone from, in just a few seconds, through a developer experience which is standardized across the business. There's just one place for all the APIs and all the business, 2 different teams in 2 different countries, in 2 different clouds, in 2 different vendors, with completely different sets of tech, have developed these Cheese APIs, and now we can use them and evaluate them. And we'll then carry on as the developer, using exactly which Cheese API suits us best, and off we'll go. And then at the other side of the universe, our administrator can then start looking through the catalog, saying, okay, how many views, which of these cheese applications have been getting the most action? Is it the one, is it the one on Axway, or is it the one on Azure? And then they can look in the API Observer and actually start comparing. If we go to a more finer granularity in the last 5 minutes, so we can already start to see some traffic here, and we can see some traffic just in the last 5 minutes from what we've been doing there with from going through the Azure gateway on Cheese API v2, and similarly some other traffic. I think that was when I sent the wrong message to our Axway gateway. So you can see how in our API Observer, all these logs from these different platforms are rolled up to give us some really good actionable intelligence, and start actually comparing these different APIs and these different platforms side by side in terms of how successful the HTTP request traffic is, how many failures, what the duration is in terms of latency. So you can objectively measure API performance. And that's the whole point, is you've now got the ability to go back. And if we just drill back to our security and cut redundancies, on the security side, you're getting your email, you're getting all of your security credentials funneled through a single process. And that single process is, of course, our API subscription catalog. So going back to subscriptions here, your subscription to the Axway hosted API and also the Azure hosted API are in essentially the same, there's that same screen here. So all your subscriptions were in one place. They're all subscribed using the Amplify workflow, and you don't have to touch those backend platforms that sit behind them. You just consume them. And yeah, your credentials are furnished directly towards you in the same flow. This could equally be Microsoft Teams integration or or some other type of integration, depending on what your business likes to use. Not everyone wants to use email for these sort of keys. You could have a Teams card, would be potentially more secure. So yeah, security credentials are rationalized across all those different platforms, and the complexity is hidden. So that way, you've now got a one subscription flow for every API across the business, all factored via Amplify at the front end. So that, I think, is the fourth pillar pretty much covered. And the fifth pillar of the Axway API ecosystem is API Builder. So the first four pillars all work on a basic assumption that you have some API in your business, that you have at least some API. You may be a super mature API organization, in which case your need for the first four pillars is extremely strong, or you may be a much less API mature organization with just a few APIs. And in that case, the final piece of the puzzle that actually completes the ecosystem picture is the API Builder. And one of Eric's objectives to build faster, API Builder is definitely, that is what it's all about. So let's show you API Builder, just to give you an example of what you can do there. So API Builder is essentially, it's a low-code / no-code tool. And I'm sure you've all heard of these tools. And there's a lot of powerful things you could do in API Builder. You can create flows, and each of those flows you can then, for instance, insert JavaScript steps. And we've got quite a lot of good examples here, but if I find one that might be particularly interesting, let's have a look for one of our test flows. See if I've left it in the right place. Here we go. So the idea is you can, and this is the design time in the low-code, no-code environment for API Builder. So you can do all sorts of, add as much complexity or as little complexity as you wish. You could add JavaScript, add a little bit of code if you need to manipulate some data or do something that there wasn't a ready-made connector for. You can convert from different encoding, such as base64, authorization steps. So what you can see here is a design time for your low-code / no-code tool. But one of the really powerful things about API Builder is it works on a plugin model. So there's various plugins for different data sources. And what you'll notice here is things like PostgreSQL, Microsoft SQL, MongoDB. So lots of database systems, and in this case, MySQL, which we're actually using. So if you have a MySQL database, let's say, and we'll pop over to, and this is an example of a MySQL database that we can see. And if we have a look at a table here with I think there's one about cats. Here we go. So cat API data. You'll see it's a traditional RDBMS model. We've got a table in this database with ID, name, breed, size, hair, and weight, and then some data about some different cats. So here's 4 different cats in that database with their ID numbers, and then all the details. So we've got our data structured in what is a traditional RDBMS model stored in a MySQL database. And we all know how you can use SQL to add a new cat entries, new line entries into the table. We all know how you can delete them and list them and query them using SQL. But of course, how do you build an API in front of that without actually doing any hard work? And that is one of the things that API Builder is particularly powerful at, is that very quickly you can create a new model. If we have a look for here we go. So here's our cat model. And inside here, if we look at, we'll see that all we're really doing is creating what we call a CRUD API out of that database table. And CRUD stands for create, retrieve, update, and delete, which of course are all the basic operations for administering that data. And if we go back to the API docs there and have a look, here we go, there's our cats API. And within the cats API, we've also generated these methods. So get, so we can get a list of all the cats there. The documentation is already generated as well. Post, we can create a new cat. We can count the number of cats in the database. So very quickly, we've actually built a working API. And we've got, instead of just getting a select star from our database type of SQL query, we're getting back nice JSON. So the data structure is in JSON. So it ties in. So this API we've created with literally no effort at all is now actually running in what we call native JSON for a REST/JSON API. So in terms of good design principles, we're following those. And now we've got this API automatically created with these 5 methods. We can then download the Swagger from that, for example, and then publish that in an API manager, and it would appear in Amplify. So yeah, the idea is you can go, if we just close the loop on that and have a little look, go back to our, there we go, design time view, you'll see that cat API is in the unified catalog, and there it is. And each of those methods, in fact, that one's a slightly reduced version I did earlier, but I think the other one might have the full list of methods in. Oops, not car, cat. So I think that's the right one. Yeah, that's the one we were looking at. So essentially, we've gone very quickly. We haven't been very diligent with the documentation. Typically, you would, of course, write some much cooler stuff in API Builder. But in terms of the usability of this API, it's ready to go. And in terms of its ability to actually be used in anger and executed in anger, we can do that. So yeah, the key piece, and again, developer portal-like functionalities exist within Amplify. So I think that the message here, and if we go back to our final pillar, build faster, is you can start off saying, I've got some interesting data in a database. Doesn't matter what database it is. It could be Postgres, it could be Microsoft, it could be Oracle, it could be anything. Let's API enable that. Then our API will appear in the unified catalog, and then the time to market is going to be severely reduced, because suddenly developers can now have an API they can work against, which is actually structured against some legacy data in the business, which previously no one thought could become available, or would have been a huge migration project to actually to get at that data and API enable it. But API Builder can do that in moments. So API Builder is your low code, no code building block, which will take you from existing data to API enabled data, and then feeds into the rest of these pillars to create the whole ecosystem approach. So I think that's probably enough from me. And shall I pass back to your good self, Eric, and to wrap up on the session and take questions?
We'll take questions together.
Cool.
So I have a question for you on the security aspect. You mentioned that we could have all the keys be taken care of in the same place, which is a value per se. But my question is, when it comes to hidden or shadow APIs that could be a threat for your company, how can we help discover those shadow APIs, expose them, so that measures can be taken against those APIs that shouldn't be exposed?
Yeah, that's a good question, Eric. And if we think back to the administrator view of Amplify, because one of the things I was doing a lot in the demo is constantly contrasting the designer and API developer view versus the administrator view. And the administrator view can see the security credentials that are set up on each of those individual APIs that have been imported into the catalog. So if there's been some shadow development and there's been somebody who's spun up an API gateway in Azure or AWS and put some non-compliant APIs in there with poor security, the discovery agent will discover those. And part of the discovery is to discover those APIs, the security mechanisms used on those APIs, which could be as simple as none. They could be insecure and have no API keys, no OAuth credentials, nothing. So the developer, so the administrator, before they've even shared any of those freshly imported APIs from a new API manager platform, before they share them with any developers who might then subscribe to them, they can then audit the security on those and say, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. That's an API key. That's okay. That's compliant. But if they were to find, for instance, a pass-through security with completely insecure endpoint, then they could say, okay, well, even though this is, we're not going to expose that insecure API in Unified Catalog to our developers, because that's, of course, breaking our security compliance. But what we can do is then add another layer of security onto that. So rather than throwing away that shadow IT, and rather than telling those people in the shadow IT team, you've got to fix this, which is one option, you could then bring that through our Amplify Cloud proxy and then add security there. So an insecure API is discovered by the discovery agent. We could effectively proxy it through Amplify and add security to make it compliant there. So we've got options as to how we deal with that shadow IT. And we don't just have to tell them off. We don't just have to cancel it. We can actually bring it into compliance in a nice way as well. So there are good options there for how we deal with those situations.
We're out of time, but if anybody wants to ask any question, now is the time. So you can do it in the chat. And if not, I just created a poll, and I'm creating another one. So if you could take the time to fill the poll, that'd be great. And I will thank you, everybody, for being with us. It would have been even better if we were all in the same room. But next year, probably next year.
Next year, definitely. I will be in Paris instead of with my green screen. I'll be with Eric. We'll be sat together.
Yeah, I'm in Paris. I can see the Eiffel Tower. Very funny today, but I'll keep it for myself today.